the most convenient period for us to sit as a joint committee of Parliament. So I don't know where the hullabaloo is coming from, because this is a necessary step. It is a fundamental step that whenever a bill is introduced in Parliament, in other chambers, it must be taken to the committee for consideration, and then the committee will make a report to Parliament, the plenary of Parliament. And you know, the committee has to have deliberations on questions that are brought out through public participation. And I want Kenyans really to take the question of public participation as a fundamental pillar in our constitution. You cannot deal with any business in the House that requires a resolution unless it's a technical issue or a procedural issue. If it is a bill or a substantive motion, you have to go through the committee. And also you must have public participation. That is a fundamental pillar in our constitution. Now, after that public participation and the committee, the thing will come back to Parliament for the second reading and third reading, and eventually we'll have a vote on it.
You've spoken about the second and the third reading, but here comes the question where the belief is we should not touch that document because it does not belong to Parliament. It belongs to the people who have initiated it through a popular initiative. Mm-hmm. And that is where you once voiced your opinion that public participation cannot be cosmetic. Mm-hmm. But there are those who say that it is not your document and the process of Parliament is just ceremonial. How then do we go into the second reading and the third, and we know that amendments can be introduced?
If it was ceremonial, then it would not come to Parliament. Why bring it to Parliament if it was ceremonial? If Parliament did not have a role, why bring it to Parliament?
But then there's
the crucial fact that people have forgotten and have had some discussion on this. If you look at the BBI task force report, they are a cocktail of legislative, recommendations. We are going to amend several statutes which flow from the Constitution. If you look at the Elections Laws Amendment Act, or rather the Elections Laws Act, there is a bill which was part of the report to amend the Elections Act. Now, we have provisions in this bill, the Constitutional Kenya Amendment Bill, which touch on elections, and we are going to amend the Elections Act. We are going to amend the County Governments Act, again, which flows from the Constitution. We are going to amend provisions relating to public finance, the control of Auditor General. And we have introduced a new formula of sharing revenue. All these flow from the Constitution. Even the procurement and disposal of public assets, these are all things which are provided in the Constitution. And there are proposals that because we are amending the Constitution, there should be consequential amendments to the statutes. So as you look at the bill, you don't look at it in isolation. You must build a basis in the report that we are passing this bill, but because they are consequential amendments, the issues that have arisen that needs to be addressed through these consequential amendments are the following. For example, if the procedure and the way we are going to elect, and instead of having 5 or 6 elections, now we got to bring into considerations these constituencies that have been brought in place. We have a situation where now every county will have 2 seats in the Senate. Now, those will have consequential amendments to the Elections Act. And if you then look at it in isolation, without looking at the entire legal regime, like the task force did, the task force, in their report, they are saying, because we are proposing to amend the Constitution, we are also proposing the following consequential amendments. So this is what I was saying, that, it's not going to be cosmetic, because we have to look at these amendments vis-a-vis these consequential amendments. And that is an important function for Parliament to play, because it's all going to come back to Parliament.
And with that thinking, there are those who believe that if we change, like you're saying, there are some bills that were attached to the report and they were forwarded to Parliament at that particular time. Was it 12 or 21 bills that were born out of the whole BBI process?
Yes.
Then there was this particular bill that touched on the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020.
Yes.
Now, aren't this, what you're talking about, were they not addressed when these specific bills were introduced, and they are touching on some of the changes that need to be made?
They were addressed with the bill as it was when the report was promulgated in Kisii. Yes. That is when the bill was seen by the public for the first time. The bill that is now proposed, which has Junaid Mohammed and Dennis Waweru as the promoters, that bill is not the same bill. It's not the same bill that was, promulgated in Kisii. There have been some amendments. I'm not saying the same because it's totally different, but there have been changes. You remember that time we were talking about multi-member constituencies. Mm-hmm. There are no multi-member constituencies. And the revenue sharing, again, that has changed. So those consequential amendments that were proposed by the task force cannot hold water anymore. They have to be amended. And this is the most important task that this committee, sitting as a technical committee, because if you take it to the plenary, people will pass, and then you find in doing the consequential amendments, you have made grave mistakes that when the matter is taken before the courts of law, you are put in a situation where something that has properly gone before Parliament is declared to be unconstitutional. I did know there is a very essential provision in the Constitution, Article 2 and Article 10 of the Constitution. It says anybody, not institution of government, that any person who makes a decision in relation to the Constitution or applies a law must apply the Constitution. You must always keep the Constitution at the back of your mind. You cannot say Parliament, because we can change any law, we can violate the Constitution. The Constitution requires even a chief that when he's applying any law, he must always remember that the Constitution is a supreme law. So you have to look at all these things in totality. And the courts have said, you need to pass through every essential step as provided in the Constitution. We have a matter before the Court of Appeal now between the National Assembly and the Senate. And the courts have said that all the provisions in the Constitution must be complied with. They are mandatory provisions in the Constitution that you have to obey, so that you may pass a very good law, but because you missed an essential procedural but mandatory procedural step, that law is rendered to have been enacted unconstitutionally.
Some members of your committee are of the opinion that this law cannot be changed whatsoever because it's a popular initiative, and it will be akin to changing the will of the people. And an example has already been given, that what if the people of Kenya wanted to change the structure of Parliament, and since the Constitution has said that it has to go through Parliament, then why would Parliament want to decide on a matter that touches on them that has been started by the popular initiative? That is one. And two, there are those who are of the opinion that even the drafters of the Constitution 2010 knew that there would be such mischief from Parliament, or they playing their role when it comes to legislating on a popular initiative. And that is why they were basically saying that the role of Parliament in this particular bill should just be ceremony. What did you say about such people?
No, popular initiative, by the way, does not mean it is the people who are enacting, driving the process of amending the Constitution. It speaks to the process, not to the person who is amending the Constitution. The Constitution is amended through the referendum. A popular initiative can be taken by anybody. If, for example, Muridi, now you want to amend the Constitution through a popular initiative, all you need is to draft a bill and collect 1 million signatures and take it to the Electoral Commission. If you have complied with the rules, then it's taken to the Constituent Assembly. The people enact the Constitution when they vote through a referendum. But a popular initiative is available to everybody. Like the popular initiative is being driven by the promoters, who are Honorable Dennis Waweru and Honorable Junaid Mohammed. It could be a single Kenyan. Yeah. It does not mean that it is the people who are doing it. It is the process. And the same promoters, they could have gone to a member of parliament and say, I don't want to go through a popular initiative. I want a parliamentarian, one or two of them or three of them, to sponsor the bill through the parliamentary process. That is why it is now possible for a Kenyan to initiate the amendment of the Constitution through a popular initiative without a referendum. That is also possible.
Yes.
Or he can do it through a parliamentary process.
But now the question is, how are you able to change what has already gone through the 24 county assemblies and passed and owned by the people, and then it comes to you? Does that not mean that we have to start the whole process afresh?
What I can say about that, and I think I've addressed this question two years ago. I'm the one who has constantly said that you cannot have a multiple question referendum under our constitutional arrangement through a popular initiative that goes to a referendum. That, according to me, other people have got different, appreciation of what the law is. And it has always been, in my view, that once a bill that has been drafted through a popular initiative has gone through the county assemblies, and through that process is called a draft bill. But when it is introduced in Parliament, it's called a bill. To that extent, Parliament cannot change it. It cannot change it. But what I'm saying, what Parliament says or does, or how Parliament votes, can have an impact on how the people decide. It's just like the county assemblies, if, for example, we just had 24 county assemblies voting for the bill, everybody would have said, this is a 50-50 chance. But because nearly 44 county assemblies said yes, you can see that now, the picture it has, that opposition will not be as big as we originally thought. So that if Parliament were to vote where, let's say in the Senate, where we are 67, 40 members voted for and 37 voted against. Now, that may have an impact on how the people are going to vote. And to that extent, I was saying, therefore, considering the other things that I've said about the report and public participation, that may have an impact on how people vote during the referendum. Just like public participation during the parliamentary process can enable people who are hearing what people are saying through public participation, to change their mind or to make their mind one way or the other.
So in essence, you're basically saying it's not a must that we change, but we want to listen to these experts that you've enlisted at this time to either know whether we are going to address on changes or not. Or you're certain that we have to make changes to this document that was submitted to Parliament?
No, the changes, what I've said in effect, you cannot make any changes. You cannot. But what happens during the parliamentary process will have an impact on the decisions that the country is going to make. Okay. Yeah.
So you were part of a meeting, we saw photos of the National Executive Council of the ODM, and we do understand that you, even through the communique, to say that you affirm your resolve to see the BBI pass and a referendum held. That basically means that we are not going to have a push and pull with regards to this committee and what we've seen before.
No. There's not going to be a push and pull. And I wish you were able to sit during the committee's deliberations.
Yes.
I can tell you inside that committee, there was no push and pull. But people wanted a process in which all the questions that had been raised during public participation or others that have come directly through the members addressed in one way or the other. But throughout, there's no single issue which brought acrimony or an exchange that one would say differences were emerging through the committee.
So as of now, when are we likely to are we on course to have a referendum in July or June? And how soon are we likely, if you say there is no problem within the committee, how soon are we likely to see it tabled in Parliament, in both houses?
I think by the time Parliament reconvenes, the report will be tabled. Of course, there's the alternative of a special sitting of both houses being convened. That is another possibility. But I am sure that by the 4th of May, before the National Assembly resumes, and certainly by the 11th of May, when the Senate resumes, the committee will be ready to lay the report before both houses.
There were fears, probably, and this has been attributed to you, and some of the fears that you are bringing out are with regards to the entry of the One Kenya Alliance and what part they will play, having known until now that the proponents and the pushers of this BBI process are President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. So there was the question of the entrance of the One Kenya Alliance and what part they will play, and probably might have slowed down even the working of the committee, because there are those who feel like you did not have a clear direction from the party leader because he was sick on how to proceed with the process and the BBI.
No, I can tell you, ODM, at least as a party, has always been clear right from the beginning. You know that our party leader was part of the Handshake, and part of the communique that was released, it was in the hand of Raila Amolo Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, and their proposals, and then they established the task force. And even the events after the task force had released its report, we have participated individually as members of the party or as a committee specially constituted to deal with certain aspects of that process. ODM, I can assure you, has been clear on the question of the need for this constitutional review and the referendum. In fact, way back 2 years ago, Otiende Amolo and I in Bondo, in a rally, I think that was the year 2019, that we are saying we should have a referendum before the month of April in 2020. We are saying that in 2019, which means that our thoughts were very clear on the road map as far as the referendum was concerned. But now came the pandemic, the coronavirus, and that has interfered with the timetable. But now I am sure, almost as night follows the day, that come July this year, we will have the referendum. And you bring the question of One Kenya Alliance. I think the One Kenya Alliance is a little bit misguided because, we are focused on this constitutional review with the objective being an amendment to our constitution for the reasons that have been stated in the report and other fora. The One Kenya Alliance, willy-nilly, if you look at what they're doing, is focused on 2022. And we're saying if you mix these two things, you cannot properly achieve, the referendum, which is time-bound as far as we're concerned. If you don't have a referendum in time, then these constitutional changes will put us in a constitutional conundrum because these constituencies that are going to be created, when are the respective registers going to be established, and the processes that are consequential, you need time, to bring all this into effect before you can have an election in 2022. So I think the focus really should be on this referendum. And thereafter, we'll have as many candidates as, as there are candidates.
Going back into that question about 2022, and we know that the passage of the BBI will create new positions. And you're saying that the One Kenya Alliance is more focused about 2022. Now, the point of conflict that has been projected is the fact that ODM as a party has not been very happy with how this One Kenya Alliance is being treated with regards to a promise when the expanded executive comes, some positions are going to be given to them, yet you are the drivers with President Uhuru Kenyatta of this process.
We've not been worried about that at all, let me tell you. In fact, I've been worried on other issues that have nothing to do with the One Kenya Alliance. Politicians will also always play politics. Where those politics get them is another question. But we've never been worried about that. And they're free to do what they want to do. But this creation of positions, again, if people look at it as, positions which are created to balkanize the country for power sharing, not for purposes for which it was meant, including issues to do with gender, if they were very, very, careful about what they say about gender, probably amongst the four we would see a lady there, so that this vision is clear. But it is an agenda that is not based on any ideology. It's not based on any constitutional objectives. It's all about power, which is going to come in 2022, willy-nilly. So I don't see where the worry should be. And I was very happy to see a confident Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga, in the middle of this week, touring together, although Raila Odinga was not fully recovered, but concentrating on the work that must be done now. Do you hear any one of these characters talk about the Big Four agenda? Do you hear them talk about, even in terms of this virus, what needs to be done? What is their contribution? What are they suggesting to Uhuru Kenyatta to resolve this pandemic? Do you hear them talk about the economy? Sometimes I hear them talking about debt. But who doesn't talk about debt? Wangari Maathai used to talk about issues of debt, World Bank and so on, when Musalia was Minister of Finance. What did he do about it at that time? Zero. So if you use debt as a political weapon, as an agenda for purposes of balkanizing the country, or for just the raw ambition for power, then I don't think we're doing Kenya any good. What we should do is, there are problems of the day. Uhuru Kenyatta has got nearly 16 months to go. 16 months is a long time. Magufuli had 5 years. People complain about what he did, like I do, in the human rights sector. But what he did in those 5 years in infrastructure, in the energy sector, is phenomenal. And therefore, I really believe that there's a lot that Uhuru Kenyatta can do and his government can do, which we are not part of in this 1.5 years. But the wrong agenda is the one which has consumed ambitious politicians who want us to talk about 2022. We should arrange ourselves into tribal alliances and focus our minds to that particular year, which I think would be a great disservice to the country.
Was it spoken about when you had the NEC meeting about Raila running for 2022?
At that NEC meeting, we didn't talk about Raila running in 2022.